for those that have, that are sitting in on our meeting. We'll begin with our call to order. We'll start with Chair Hymas.
Here, let me get these lit up here.
Okay.
Here.
I'm gonna let you turn them on.
Yep, let's start going.
All right, Vice Chair Hart,
Here.
Member Bogus,
Yes, ma'am.
Member Booth,
I'm here.
Member Bollinger,
Here.
Member Davis. Not yet. Member Green.
Present.
Thank you. Member Carey,
Here.
Member Lear,
Here.
Member Hall,
Here.
Member Real,
Here.
Member Kelly,
Here.
Member Earl,
Here.
Member Brinton.
Here.
All right, was Member Davis on? Okay, and Member Wood here. We have a time certain, but I'm not seeing him here yet. So we will move ahead. We have, we'll turn the time to Ashley Bell, Assistant Attorney General, for a discussion on a waiver.
Sorry, these ones are different. Is that on? Okay, so this waiver request is coming from Wallace Stegner Academy under R277121. It's a request for a waiver from R277552 subsection 6(7), which is the requirement that schools provide their enrollment estimates by October 1st of every year. This request is coming in. Wallace Stegner already had an approved plan to open a new satellite campus up in Davis County. It was anticipated to open in 2027 school year, but they acquired a building sooner than anticipated and were able to plan to open for this next school year, 2025 to 2026. And so they have requested a waiver of that October 1st date for providing information to our finance team. And I did check with Deputy Superintendent Jones to make sure that that wouldn't have like a significant impact on our finance team. And he said it's workable. So the rest of the information is in the application for you guys.
Perfect. Okay, do we have a motion before us, before we start discussion?
Yes, before we make the motion, I just want to thank the board for all the discussion we had on this issue and allowed to be able to come to this point. So yes, I would like to move that the board approve Wallace Stegner Academy Sunset Satellite Campus request waiver for Utah admin R277522 subsection 6(7).
All right. Is there discussion to this motion? Member Lear? Oh, second? Okay. Oh, do you want to speak to this? I apologize.
I'm super grateful that this school, this is coming to my district, and just looking forward to seeing, all the things that take place with the school. So.
Okay, thank you. Member Lear?
Thank you. I appreciate Member Hall's energy and enthusiasm for this, and the representatives were really well prepared. And I either did not hear or forgot to ask, especially because this is being sort of fast-tracked. I want to make sure that it would be Davis School District, I think, was Davis School District comfortable with this fast-tracking? And because charter schools moving into neighborhoods sometimes always do affect the neighborhood enrollment. So I just remembered if either Member Hall remembers or if Ashley A.G. Beal remembers, or was there any contact with Davis School District?
Member Hall, can you speak to that?
About it at all from the folks that I've spoken to specifically?
So we don't really know if anybody's even if Davis School District even knows.
I don't know. It was a Davis-Weber split, so it would be a little bit from both districts, like Roy Linden area.
Which may be helpful.
Yeah, but I don't know specifics on notification to those districts.
I would hope in the future we can, especially when they're fast-tracked, we could check with the school districts and that enrollment doesn't probably matter as much in that west side of Davis area. There's probably a lot of growth, but I think it does adversely affect schools so much, and it can And so I would hope in the future, maybe we are more sensitive to that. Thanks.
Member Carey, I do one question, please. We have our time certain here. Is this something, would you,
I just wanted to address Board Member Lear's question because that was asked during the committee.
okay.
So
Okay,
with
let's go ahead
permission-
and then I have no other lights. If with permission from the board, we'll go ahead and vote and then have our time certain. If, okay, go ahead. Thank
Yeah,
you.
so Board Member Lear, I asked contact with the Davis County Superintendent as well as the Weber and Ogden School District Superintendents. And the response was that, as I recall, they have been in contact with the Davis leadership, but not the Ogden and Weber. And I encouraged them to do that, and they said they would. Thank you.
All right. Okay, we'll go ahead with the vote then because we have online. We'll do this through roll call. Member Brinton,
Yes.
Member Earl,
Yes.
Member Kelly,
Yes.
Member Rill,
Yes.
Member Hall,
Yes.
Member Lear,
Yes.
Member Carey,
Yes?
Member Green,
Yes.
Member Davis on, Member Davis,
Yes.
Member Bollinger,
Yes.
Member Booth,
Yes.
Member Bacchus.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Vice Chair Hart,
Yes.
Chair Hymas.
Yes.
That passes unanimously. Thank you, Board. We'll now turn the time over. We have Representative Strong here to speak with us regarding his bill, and we appreciate your time so much.
No worries. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me. You just want me to start talking or usually have to wait?
Yes. All right, we're referring to your school fees bill,
Yeah.
and this is HB 344. And I don't know if you want to address questions or if you'd like to talk to us about
Why
what
don't I
problem
just
you're
give
trying
you
to solve with it
the
and your-
rundown on it, and then you can
Perfect.
ask questions. And in retrospect, I probably should have considered calling Mike Curtis or Finn Rose, some of our drafters, because if you have any detailed questions, I just would refer you to them, as they know this space so much better than I do. But I think I can get through most of it. So basically what we've done with this bill, and we've gotten good feedback. I've had several people reach out, and every time I've sent them right to our drafters. And in fact, I'm in a brain cloud right now, but who's our liaison to all the charters?
Royce Van Tassel.
Yeah, Royce Van Tassel. He came up with one just the other day, or just yesterday, and we're working on a little amendment, as there were a couple of the charters that one of the requirements is to build, so you have to have a free path to graduation. Someone can go from start to finish without any fees. And there's a couple of the charters that would have a conflict with that on a couple of their English things or something. Their path is an AP course, and you're allowed to charge fees for an AP course. So we're just doing a little carve out for them that don't have that, so that they can charge fees for those AP courses because they don't provide the equivalent non-fee course. So getting back to the basics of it, basically we have what we're now referring to non-fee courses, and these are English, math, science, social studies, and health, I believe is the list, but these kind of core educational classes. Those classes need to be without fees. And then we have our fee courses, and basically that's everything else. The marching bands, they backed off when they saw, we got some good comments from them, but choir and woods and art classes and all these things, they can charge the fees the same way they have in the past for their courses. All those can charge fees. AP courses can charge not only for the credit and the test, but in some instances they can even charge. I know some of the AP courses, like in the science realm, have they go a little bit further beyond, and they have some additional supplies and stuff that they use, so they'll be able to charge fees for those as well. So those are all covered. There's, as I mentioned, there's a no fee path. So if you, for some reason, don't want to pay any fees whatsoever, when you get to, say, you need a credit in art or something, it might be art appreciation rather than a pottery class or something like that. So the school needs to provide that path. And we feel like that's pretty fair. And really that addresses hopefully the people, in fact, just kind of a little precursor maybe to something I'm thinking about for next year. This bill, if you get a waiver, then you can take any class you want and you get the waiver. But if you're just barely above the waiver, then you might be severely limited on the class you might take just because of your financial situation. So the free path would hopefully apply to them if they're in that situation. But next year, I'd even like to address this, we call it up here a benefits cliff. And maybe we can look at that waiver and say, perhaps we should have a ramp rather than just a stop, so that a young student that wants to take marching band and can't afford the $1,000 fee or whatever it is can maybe get by with a $600 fee or something to that effect. So if you have any thoughts in that direction, get with me, because I think I'd like to address that next year on a separate bill. So, and then finally, the last thing we had, and I think we talked about this last time, is to have a transparency piece as well, that when you go to sign up for your courses, we don't want anyone to go to their class and say, oh, golly, I didn't know there was a fee for this class. When you go online and you have to select that class, it's going to say, Woods, $27, or Foods, $11, whatever it is, right there at the front. And then there can be an explanation beneath that as well. But we'd love it if that's part of the bill, is this transparency piece. So I think that covers the major chunks for the bill, and I'm happy to try and answer any questions.
Great, thank you so much. So we have one question, Chair Hymas.
Yeah, thank you, Representative. I believe you've been working with Member Kelly on this for a little bit. Maybe you've been in contact. I guess one of the questions I have, and I'm sure it's been addressed already, we talk about math, science, English, some of these core classes. Science in particular is lab heavy.
Yeah.
I know that this has been, right, this is not a shock, like, wait a second. No,
Yeah.
it is. So I guess what I'm asking, has there been the consideration, and if there has been, maybe speak to that a little bit, of a maximum fee, instead of just leaving it up to the LEA saying, hey, we recognize that times are tight, we'll put a maximum fee of $30 on science. You know what I mean? Has that discussion taken place? And
It actually hasn't. We did allow for some fees in the AP side of things on those types of courses, but it hasn't been a big part of the discussion. And I do realize that those science courses do have a little bit more to them than math or English.
I appreciate that. I won't take the time here. Maybe I'll try to just grab you offline. Maybe we can speak to that a little bit more, whether it changes the bill or not. I don't know. That's up to you, but happy to further discuss that. Thank you.
Yeah, and no worries. And just so you know, I am happy to consider we have an amendment coming for the charter schools, and I'm happy to discuss any of those things, and we can determine if it's something we need to approach or not.
Great, Member Bogus and then Member Lear.
Thank you, Representative Strong.
Yes.
I don't see it in here. Does this reconcile the conundrum that exists when somebody takes a debate class and uses it for English credit?
Yes, and I wish I had the drafters here. That was a specific thing that we talked about, and we actually met with Representative, who's our debate representative?
Welton.
Welton, yes, Doug Welton, because that was his question, and I wish I could direct you right to the spot where we did that, but we did cover that.
We did cover those. There's a number of them that exist through PE and otherwise, but that's been taken care of.
I believe so.
Okay, all right,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah.
Member Rill or Member Lear? Okay.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. I had two thoughts that are connected. I wondered if there was a review by your drafting attorneys. Many of the people who knew about the permanent injunction that dealt with this issue are not around anymore, literally, or in the legislature.
This
And
back from several years ago.
it was in the 1990s. So
That
it
would
is,
be
but
several, yeah.
but a few years ago, as this issue became more heated,
Yeah.
our deputy assistant at the time, or deputy superintendent at the time, she can't be a double deputy, anyway, addressed that with the courts, I believe, and found that that permanent injunction is still very much alive. It's not, didn't go away. And I read an earlier draft of your bill. I admit that I haven't read this substitute, but I just want to make sure that if I'm accurate, that because of that injunction where the judge clearly stated that being able to be involved in extracurricular activities is part of the complete public school experience, that should be equally available to rich kids and poor kids. He said it a lot more artfully. But I want to make sure, so a student who is below it hits the fee waiver threshold can get a waiver to take classes he wants. Is that correct?
Yes.
So the
I'm nearly
waivers-
positive that, and they can
Alive and
also
well.
participate in, I don't believe we addressed this in the bill, but they can also participate in extracurricular
That's
activities.
That's what I was trying to say.
Yes.
With a waiver, with
With
a
the fee waiver.
So it doesn't relegate a number of students. Granted, if you didn't care about those activities as a student or parent, you could do anything for free. But if you wanted a class, you still would be, the waivers would still be available. And that doesn't address your kind of middle income people who it is difficult for.
Yeah, and you're correct. And unfortunately, it doesn't address those that are just over the waiver. They would have to pay the full fee in order to participate in that extracurricular
Of course, it
activity.
is always optional with schools that they have some discretion to find a way to help a student get a waiver if has some. I think that part of the bill is still, the law is still in place.
Yeah, I don't believe we've touched that.
Okay.
I do know that in talking with Representative Welton, he was concerned that there were certain students that were volunteering for everything, and they would have multiple waivers. Not that you can't have multiple waivers, but in high dollar activities. And he was kind of talking about, I don't know if he's doing it this year or not, but maybe putting some brakes on that, saying, oh, you can have two or something like that. With, if the school travels or something and they're going to travel with the choir and with the debate team and with this, and the school's picking up a sometimes several $1,000 bill. Of course, the student just above that waiver, or even the student that has some money. My kids, wouldn't say we have a lot of money, but we have enough, and we beat our children to pay those fees. Some of them meet us part way anyway.
I do.
We don't literally
always-
beat them. Just so you know.
Thank you for
being
that
facetious.
wasn't.
I know.
I wasn't sending anybody after you, but I do appreciate the answers. I'm glad that there is still the waiver opportunity.
Yeah.
I do know that even though it seems kind of steep, Utah is one of the few states that has maintained its high school athletic programs, and believe me, club sports are way more expensive. So this is still a very good deal for families and students. And I'm really glad that we're holding on to it as a complete education program and opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the things as we made these substitutes, I wanted to be a couple of things. Our education should be in the Constitution. It says free, and we could debate that word. Should probably say taxpayer funded, but we want to be sure we had those. But we also, for some of these other activities, there should be some skin in the game for students and parents that participate in these extra activities, marching bands and those things. And I know that 415, that created quite a stir, that it would decimate those programs because the school wouldn't be able to provide them all. So we feel it's important that the entire burden not be sent to maybe our folks on Social Security or people in 2 years like me, who I've got one child left in the public school system, and then when she's gone, I'll be a happy supporter of those that have kids in there. But
And I have to say, being that parent, that grandparent now for 2 decades, I am so happy I can contribute to that opportunity because it made such a difference in my life and in my children's lives. So thank you.
likewise, yeah, thank you.
So Member Bollinger, and we want to thank Representative Hall for being here, and we will get to you as, as soon as we can. Thank you. Member Bollinger.
Thank you. I won't take much time. I appreciate you being here, and Representative Strong, I appreciate your willingness to collaborate on this bill. You've been really open to the feedback that everyone's given to you. One concern that's been brought up by a local district in my area as well, and I heard you guys discuss this in the House Education Committee, is the fact that we have a deadline of April 1st for fee schedules. And the question had been, and I know there was kind of a discussion you guys had, I just want to make sure this is something that you would be in support of if the board were to consider a waiver on that deadline and push that back a little bit to allow local school boards to set fees for this next year. I know the bill says it's for the 26-27 year, but there's concerns that then they wouldn't be able to have certain classes next year. Just if you can speak to that just for a moment and let us know what your intent is.
Well, the intent is to move this bill out quickly. I don't know if any of you pay attention to this level, but we had this bill, we hurried it into education, and then it was on the board, and there were probably 50 or 60 bills ahead of it. And I talked with members of the body and some leadership and asked if we could move it to the time certain calendar. So we moved it ahead of probably 60 bills, and we addressed it last Friday. So, and then I've kind of tried to have that same push over in the Senate. It's there now, and tomorrow it will be heard in Senate Education with Senator Johnson. So, and we have an immediate effective date on it. So hopefully we can get it through there in the next week or so. And then you'll have that clarity as soon as possible. And then I know that there's, it's in kind of your court if you'd like to do that, but there's talk about giving some grace on that April 1st date. So
Thank you.
All right, I'm not seeing any other lights. Thank you for being here and for the work that you've done and being so collaborative and everything.
thank you. And once again, if you do see some bugs, we will consider them. We have every time. Just be sure you make sure, and if you send me an email, you might follow it up with a text message, because I see those a little faster, but I'll get it right to the drafters. I mean, at some point, we won't be able to do that, but we have one amendment now, and we can throw another one on if need be, so.
Perfect. All right,
Thanks.
thank you so
Appreciate it.
much. All right, we will invite Representative Hall to address us now. And this is regarding a bill that just dropped this morning, right? You'll have to
Yes.
remind me of the number. I know it's 490
It's
something.
497.
497.
And yeah, it just barely dropped out this morning. So
if you'd
sorry if
like-
you hadn't had a chance to look at it.
If you'd like to speak to it briefly and then
Sure.
address any questions, we would
Yeah,
appreciate
you
that.
bet.
Okay, thank you.
So it's HB 497. Kind of start, one of the big issues that came to me literally like a week before the session, a constituent reached out with some concerns about a sports coach that has had some complaints over the years, and he was wanting to know what he could do about it. I reached out to a couple of board members, and they referred me to the UPAC system where they can report things and, you know, all that. And as we got looking at it and talking about it, and in discussions, it was like, well, there's like a 9-month backlog on UPAC. And so one of the big things in this bill that it addresses the UPAC backlog, and that language, some of that language you're going to see online. I'm still getting used to the bill, sorry. 206 to 207 that says we should prioritize the complaints on UPAC so that we can start feeding through those. And then at the very end too, I have some intent language that's asking for, as we got talking to some of the members and others on the education committee, to try to clear that backlog quickly. I'm asking for an appropriation from stabilization funds to do what you need to do, hire some investigators or whatever we need to do. Let's get that. There's no reason that we should have people waiting 9 months to find out what's going on, neither teacher nor parent. It's not fair. And so this would say, we have intent language. We want this money to be used to get investigators out. Let's find out if there's something there. If it is, let's figure it out, clear it, and then move on and get the backlog done. So that's one of the big things this bill does. The other thing has to do with kind of as we've had reports and things. When I used to be on education committee, there was a little bit of frustration, I think, on your part and legislators' parts of not knowing exactly what's going on sometimes with reporting from LEAs. And so this just basically puts what I believe you guys have in your rule already into code saying, you know, we need to get reporting from LEAs, and that's kind of basically what the bill does. So if you have any questions, I will try to answer them. Again, just came out today, so I'm like still trying to weed right through it, so. Take any
Member
questions.
Bogus? Sorry,
And-
my mic
and-
person left me, so.
Sorry, really quickly, I think this gives the ability to allow the board to use your current processes already to ensure compliance in the ways that work for you, since it's coming right from your rule. So anyway, just wanted to say that.
So this seems to have on line 118. It seems to have language out of our 277114.
Yep.
I'm just going to leave that question there. Thank you.
Is it Member Carey? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Representative Hall, thank you so much. I mean, I understand this is hot off the presses. I did have a chance to review it this morning, and I'm grateful for a couple things. One, that you taking the time to come here and speak to us as a board, but also for making the effort to give more clarity to our process. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Okay, and is that Member Real? Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair, Vice Chair Wood. I appreciate this bill. I especially appreciate the piece about data, because I know that we've had a lot of issues with LEAs not being compliant in reporting their data, which then leads to some of our data audits looking like we don't care, we don't try to collect the data when we are really limited in our power in some ways, even though we're technically not. So I appreciate that clarification, and I think this bill looks great.
Thank you. Agreed. That's kind of, it was frustration on our part as well, being on the education committee.
All right, I'm not seeing any other lights. I do appreciate the lines regarding the prioritizing the UPAC cases. Just a clarification in that not all coaches are licensed educators.
Yes.
So if they are not a licensed educator, they wouldn't still not come to UPAC. So
Right.
just
Okay.
a clarification
The ones
there.
that are not volunteer, but they're not teachers that are coaching. Yeah.
Right, okay. So do we have, I'm not seeing any others, so
Great.
thank you so
Reach
much
out
for
if
your
you have
time.
any questions or comments, honestly. Okay, thank you.
Perfect, thank you. All right, we'll move into our budget priorities. I think we have an update on all the things appropriation from Deputy Superintendent of Operations, Scott Jones.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee, Deputy Superintendent of Operations Scott Jones. And there's quite a bit of data or information in your backups. I think it would be a value add and in the interest of time, just to go to the one that's titled PEA Final Budget Priorities. There was a version in there. Actually, there should be one that if you scroll down a little bit, I just want to make sure. Yeah, okay. So what you're looking at here is just an updated version where we highlighted just to draw out the USBE centric requests that were moved forward by PEA to EAC. So we're tracking pretty well with the process. As you recall, last at your last board meeting, you had revised your requests based on the data and information we had around revenue, that there was zero ongoing funding available. So if you'll scroll back up to the top, Greg, for me. So just to orient the board and the public to what this is telling you is it starts out with those reductions that were recommended by PEA that, again, are going on their way to EAC. And I think the key takeaway for you and for the public is you can see that those total, or you can see in the subtotal line, that amount, the roughly 25 million. And then if you scroll down a little bit more to the next block, it's really just about debits and credits, right? So if you reduce those amounts, then those amounts would go towards funding the amount for the at-risk student phase-in, or at-risk student WPU phase-in, the $300,000+ for one of our requests. Now, I know we requested 1.3 million, so PEA has recommended that amount towards your number 2 priority, which was the critical USBE FTE needs. That's ongoing money, right? FTEs we fund with ongoing money. And then, of course, due to the great work by our districts, I think it was Superintendent Lamborn and his leadership, and Superintendent Kobe from Paiute, they were able to arrive at an amount for the new NES formula, right? Which is labeled as you see it there. So you can see that those two amounts match, right? So the reductions to those programs would do. So for those who question, well, where does that money go? We'll do it. Well, it's still staying in public education. It's going towards those 3 things, balanced debits and credits, okay? Moving down quickly to B. No, actually, scroll back up a little bit for that. You see, now we get into the ongoing, okay? The ongoing priorities. They did, if you were listening to PEA, you might have seen it, or listening and looking at what they had in the backups originally. Originally, they had a 0.5% increase on top of the 4%. Then for the first time I can ever remember, they chose to saunter, right? The PEA chose to saunter, and they did some, I guess, caucusing on that aspect. And they came back and they made a recommendation to support your number 1 priority, which was your revised number 1 priority, which was a 1% on top of the 4%. So that's going to EAC as well, and that's why we've highlighted it here. And I won't go through every line here, but just for your situational awareness, these are the recommendations for new funding or funding above the base budget, okay? Or what is required to be funded in the base budget, which, as we all know, an example is the 4% based on the 5-year rolling average for the inflationary adjustment. And it does look, by all indications, that PEA honored your request to add another 1%, so that is going forward to EAC. Scrolling down, block C, or see so now here we get, we were in the ongoing portion. Now we're into the one-time portion of what PEA recommended. Again, this is not in priority order, so they didn't put a priority on any of these. PEA didn't to EAC. But we've called out or highlighted the key programs that you were interested in or had, spoke about previously for your review. If there's any, questions or concerns about those, I can take those at the end through the chair. Scroll down. Here's the one-time requests, again, not in priority order, but then you can see, for example, school safety, right? You had revised from 100 million down to 50 million, but when they sauntered and they caucused again, they came back and made another motion to get it to 75 million. I'm just calling that one out. All of them are important, but that's just an example. You see and it is being labeled student information system, and I'll take the opportunity that, for the record, this funding is not intended to put LEAs into one system, okay? It's intended to provide additional resources to get to what right is with your system of choice. And and that you'll probably hear me speak to this more to the board and also to the legislature as we have some meetings coming up on it. But you also probably were aware of the motion that was made that we do have to come back to the legislature with very descriptive, what differences will this make? The plan, what problems are we trying to solve and do those types of things too. So we have some work to do. Should EAC adopt not only the amount that was requested, the 20 million, but then also the motion too of what's required.
Scott?
Yes, sir.
Can I just
Sorry.
interrupt real quick?
Yeah,
Board
always.
members, that's motion 15
Oh, right.
on that document that I texted you on Friday morning, if you want to look at that.
Right. I really feel strongly too that we represented the PEA is representing your requests or your direction for USDB. We have some work to do there as well. There is that one-time money recommended for $4 million as for lack of a better term, just one more year of a bridge so that Superintendent Coleman and his great team can sustain FTEs to meet service requirements, both for LEAs and for the kids. Scroll down to, I know I'm probably taking too much time. Oh, that's it. Okay, I'm sorry. So that's it. Madam Chair, subject to any questions or concerns, I feel that this is the best sheet for updates, but again, there's some additional information that's worth viewing. We did do the crosswalk between the governor's request too. It's quite busy. There's a lot of information on there, but if you're interested in seeing comparatively how things came out, that's available to you as well, but I won't cover it here in the interest of time and depth.
Thank you. We do have a question or comment by Member Lear.
Thank you. Thank you. And I have a couple. Is that okay? Not too complicated. First of all, and especially given the conversation we just had with Representative Hall, if and our critical needs are only $325,000,
Right.
that's two people, maybe?
Yes, yeah, either way. So how we've done this in the past is, the superintendent supervises the positions. We typically get together if it goes through and it's funded and then decide, which positions it should go
So
to
and
based on
it's-
your identified critical
Sure, and it's
needs.
maybe an easier question than even that.
Okay.
If Representative Hall, if the bill that she's sponsoring happens to pass, then that might have extra money connected to it.
It may, yes.
That would then enhance this 325,000, which really can't make a difference the way we want it to at the USBE and a difference in the investigators for professional practices.
Madam Chair, if I may. So the 1.3 million, you see, you requested 1.3 million for 7 critical FTEs. I don't have it in front of me, but I believe we were somewhere in the range of like 200,000 plus for a new investigator. Okay, so if it stays at 335, that's pretty much if the decision is that the 335 should go for that too. It would be beneficial if we did see from Representative Hall's bill some additional funding so that then we could, make an informed decision on where best to put the 335, knowing that we have this other money
Okay.
to meet the intent of the UPAC
Just wanted to make
investigator. Yeah.
I understood that because I don't think it was, it seemed
Sure.
contradictory.
Yeah.
Second question.
Madam Chair, I believe she does understand that too. So thank you.
But my mind is a mystery, right? And the other question is, the comment you made about the SIS systems,
Uh-huh.
and if a bill like, and the fact that the intent is not for everyone, not there to be one, but that we make all SIS systems compatible and come together. And then I'm looking at a bill, and I know there are a couple of others that I can't remember off the top of my head, but I'm looking at the bill and I don't know the number. Representative Tusher's bill, 486, that
Mhm.
that kind of upends our attendance and 10-day rule and days of attendance and all that stuff. And I'm wondering, if your answer would be this, if that bill were to pass, could these sort of almost want to call them Frankenstein SAS systems, but that's too harsh. Could they be able to address something? Even would that be, how would we even do that given what we're trying to do with SIS systems?
Madam Chair, so I have read 486. I do have a meeting later today on 486 with the LFA. Based on my, initial review of the bill, this still is, should the bill pass and all those types of things there still is the need, though, to have systems that can support whatever is a result of the legislation doing that. We still have other reporting requirements. We still have to have data on students in order to calculate, the funding amounts and things. So the short answer to Board Member Lear's question is yes, I still think that this makes a difference regardless if 484 passes or not. If it does pass, I think it puts it in good shape. Otherwise, we would probably be looking at the LEA saying, well, here we go again. We have an unfunded mandate, right? If the bill passes and we have to reconfigure our systems or don't have to send data anymore, then that's going to cost money, for that. So I think we're in good shape to, and this is precisely why we wanted to do something like this, is so that we can adapt quickly to changes in law or rule, and that our systems are brought up to speed to support those changes almost real time, as quickly as possible. So does that help answer Board Member Lear's question or concern as it relates to that bill and this request?
That answer your
Mostly,
question?
I just,
Okay.
last comment, and it's not a question, but I'm concerned that if a bill like that, similar to what Representative Tusher is now proposing, it feels, and me, not a data person, not a money person, but it feels to me like it would be very difficult to manage 160 LEAs and their multiple enrollment situations and 10-day rules if we had pick your own number of days and hours. That seems really far beyond the sophistication of what I can think of as an SIS system.
And Madam Chair, if I may, I do feel that that is a very accurate and descriptive concern about what may happen with the management, but also further substantiates that the request and that additional money would help our LEAs to respond, system-wise. I mean, it's more than just systems, but I do believe I understand what Board Member Lear is saying, but that even makes it more important that we have the ability to help LEAs, small to medium to large, with money to get to what right is by the law. So
Thanks for the time.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other questions regarding budget. So if I not seeing any more lights, we will move on to any hands? No? Okay, then we will move on to our review of legislation by Deputy Superintendent of Policy, Elise Newey. And board members, we recognize this week that we have reviewed 6 bills and there's over 700. Of course, they're not all education bills, but we have only reviewed 6 in our time together. So we'd like to be able to review, move forward. We'd like to see maybe 5 to 10 minutes of a review of per bill. I've asked Vice Chair Hart to kind of give us a 2-minute warning if we start to head into that 10-minute range. Of course, this is your meeting, so if we want to go longer, we will do that. But if we'd like to have more of an understanding as a board how these bills, as you see, I think we have 16 listed on our agenda that we could move through. So also leaving time for action if there were bills that you want to take any proposed action on. So go ahead, Deputy Newey.
Oh, whenever you want. Okay, I'll just start from the top. All right. Elise Newey, Deputy Superintendent of Policy. We're going to start with HB 399. Sorry, I've got too many things pulled up, of course. So this is from Representative Stoddard. This is the school attendance amendments. The initial bill, so the one that you'll see on the site when you pull it up, it deals with two things. First is the habitual truant definition, and then also testing out assessments for the state board. I know that there have been several different entities that have been working with the sponsor to say a lot of these requirements already exist, especially the attendance issue. By our calculations or our staff's calculations, this could mean that a student could potentially qualify as habitually truant in 2 days because it could count each individual class period as a truancy, and then that could count, which would then allow them, according to this language, to refer that to the juvenile justice system. And so there is actually a sub out. It has not been officially adopted in the process yet, but there is a fiscal note attached to it. So it has gone through that process. That substitute significantly changes the bill. It is now a requirement for the Utah State Board of Education to conduct a study on chronic absenteeism. So this has kind of two parts to it. The first is that we would collect or create a template for a standardized reporting template for an LEA to use in submitting absenteeism data. To be honest, I'm not sure what a template would look like. So that's one thing we are reaching out to the sponsor to ask. The second is publishing that data on our website. So what are the chronic absenteeism rates in the state? And then the study would be the second part, and it would look at the underlying causes. There it is. There it is. No problem. Thanks for catching that. So the study would be to look at the underlying causes of absenteeism. Our staff has brought up that this could be, depending on the sponsor's intent, duplicative of our attendance audit that has been being worked on, as well as some ULEAD research that's being done on attendance. So just putting that out there, that's one of the things that's been brought up. Are there any questions? Am I supposed to ask for questions, Chair?
Yes, we have questions by Member Bollinger.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for the update on the sub. It's nice to see the sub. I'm not as much of a question, but this is more to the board as well. This came up and I'm our representative for CCJJ, and they wanted to know our stance on this, and I let them know this is not one that we discussed yet. So I would like to just be able to take some information back, not saying that we have to take an exact stance on it, but that is when talking to some local schools, that was one of their concerns, is they felt like having a bill that does a study is something that is not needed because there's been so many studies on chronic absenteeism. I'm happy to hear that there's some changes in the definition of the number of days, because it went from 20 days. I mean, when you look at research, it will say 20 days or 10% or more is the definition of chronic absenteeism, but just wondering if there's still even a need for that study if there's been so many done too. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Thank you.
No problem. Do you have any comments? No? Okay.
May I?
Yes.
Yeah, just along that same vein, I know we're trying to move quickly through these, but I want Member Bollinger to be able to take something back to her commission that she represents us on. I personally, and jump in if you disagree, I don't know how many more absenteeism studies we can do. I mean, if it comes through and says, yeah, we'll do it again, right? If we're directed to do it again, but we kind of know the issue. We know what's going on. In fact, I think a report just came out that we saw improvements in absenteeism just recently. Maybe, okay, I'm getting a head nod behind Elise. So this is important to us as well. We're working on this as far as this bill. We don't want to take it, well, unless somebody makes a motion, we're not taking a position here. But this is something that we're continually considering and looking towards. We're making improvements in this area. So just something for you to consider as you go back.
Member Vargas.
We could enter into a during all of the other work that we've done and let our staff articulate the work that has been done in this area.
We could, if you'd like to wait for the action time on our agenda, you could put that forward if you
Okay.
chose.
All right.
Member Lair.
Cut off on my end, I'm sorry.
Member Lair, did you have a comment?
Just quickly, we're currently doing an audit on attendance, which there are auditors, and I can't remember where it is in the queue. I think it's in process. I know it is in process. And that I would prefer that, and talking with Representative Stoddard, I am very pleased that the legislator is concerned about chronic absenteeism as many times as it comes out, because I think you can't help a child improve who's not in school. So I would prefer we're not to that part of the discussion yet, but I would like a conversation with him about the fact that we are literally doing an audit discussion of attendance.
Thank you. I don't have any lights, so I think you could move on to the next one.
Okay. I'm going to move on to SB 37. So this is Fillmore's minimum basic tax rate amendments. And I'm going to bring up a special guest, Dale Shakespeare, to walk us through this one.
Thank you. Do you want to introduce yourself and speak to us?
Hi, Deputy Superintendent Newey got me confused with Cole Shakespeare, who runs the fiscal monitors. Dale Frost, minimum school program administrator. Yeah, we all have beards, and I do not fault anybody for getting us confused. So Senate Bill 37 was heard in House. I don't deal with that committee very much. Revenue and taxation. Yes. And it was amended this morning. Can you go down to line 303? Yeah. Senate Bill 37. Just so now it clearly articulates that. So at a very high level, right now, school districts, they are required to levy the basic levy to be able to participate in the basic school program. So you want to receive WPUs, you have to levy school districts this one rate that's set at the state level. And then those revenues at the local level are offset the cost of those WPUs. What this bill does is it now requires county treasurers to remit those to the state, and then we pay for the full cost of the WPUs. And then, so the amendment just clarifies that USBE would, the state treasurer would receive these funds, deposit into the general fund, communicate to the state board what is being deposited. So if Alpine School District remits $1 million in basic levy revenues, we would then on their allotment memo in the next month, or within the same month, depending on the time period, remit that $1 million in state funds to them. And this all goes through the grades 1 through 12 program. So right now, so if you look at the budget, the grades 1 through 12 program is about 2.8 billion. 800 million of that comes from basic levy revenues. So I'm operating under the assumption that those appropriations would change, and now would be 2.8 million from the Uniform School Fund. But that would need to be a change done in the budget bills. That's not in this bill. Happy to answer any other questions about Senate Bill 37.
Member Buckus.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I always enjoy listening to you guys speak. It really makes my brain like do things. We should put it on some imaging system. If I hear you correctly, people are levying, the money's coming in, they're sending it to us. We knock it around a little bit and send it back. Did I hear that correctly in the words that you said?
Chair, may I answer the
Yes,
question?
please.
So the answer would be under this bill, that's how that would work. Right now, it goes to the districts, and their state aid is offset by that. So take that example, if Alpine collects $1 million from the basic levy, their state aid would be $1 million less for that program. And under this, it would send it to the state, and then we would be remitting that back to the district.
Do we know the impetus of the why we would want to involve multiple steps in this process? As opposed to continuing down the pathway we're using now?
Chair, may I answer?
Yes.
I've
please.
asked that question too, because, under this right now, it's money in, money out. And it would it would require changes for county treasurers and for the state treasurer. I will be transparent. I personally would love to not have to hound the counties and find out the property tax amounts and do all of that. So it does provide a little more transparency to the state, but it does add steps on the flow of money. Well, right now, those basic levy revenues go to the district, and we simply offset the state aid for that.
Okay, I have one final question, if that's okay. So in
Please.
multiple states, property tax money comes into schools on a certain date. And many small schools find themselves taking out lines of credit just to pay their payroll because that money's not coming in. Are we going to put ourselves in a situation where our LEAs are going to be forced to take out lines of credit because they've either got money in CDs that can't be touched? And in particular, I'm thinking small charters and small LEAs in rural areas. Are we presenting a situation where we're going to put our people in precarious situations?
Chair, may I answer that question?
Please, go ahead.
So regarding charter schools, they don't deal with this funding mechanism of the basic levy. They get all of it from the state.
Okay, I
So
didn't know that.
as for small rural school districts, they do participate in the basic levy revenues. With this amendment, the flow of money would essentially be the same. It's just the funding source that would change. And the timing of it. That was one of the concerns under the original version of the bill, because property taxes don't come in uniformly across the year.
Yeah,
They primarily come, 80% of them, in November and December.
yes.
And so there was a concern about, there is an interest income aspect of that is largely resolved with this amendment. So if they need, so what I'd say is from a fiscal standpoint, there's not an impact as to when they receive funds. It's just one's coming from the state, from an allotment memo, one's coming from the county.
Okay, thank you.
Member Ballinger?
Thank you. And you might have just answered one of my questions, which I've had individuals bring up, is the interest. So interest on this money, are you saying that it will now go to the districts and not stay at the state level?
Chair, if I can answer that question. When I originally did the analysis, I assumed that we'd be allocating the property tax revenues on a 1/12 basis as we pay schools now. The language is now very clear that that's not the, we will remit as the money comes. We will remit the money as it comes into the state. And so there, with one exception, which would be actually, no, that's not the case because it's the full amount. Yeah, all school districts, whether it comes from the state or comes from the county, it earns interest at the same level, if that makes sense. So it shouldn't have a significant impact on interest earnings one way or the other, either for the state or for school districts. That wouldn't be the case if we did this on a 1/12 basis.
One more question, if I may,
Please.
Vice Chair. One other concern that's been brought up is that, and correct me if this is wrong, is that the money would go into a general fund. And if that's the case, could any extra money be spent on things outside of education? Can you address that concern?
Chair, if I may answer, as far as I can read, as the bill's written, it is deposited into the general fund, which can be used for, purposes outside of what is the constitutional earmark right now. However, what I would say is that there's a corresponding increase on the funding side. So essentially, you're creating a savings for one fund, you're creating a cost for the other, that offset. And so the cost of the state right now wouldn't change. But they could be, and this is a question for me, because if it's money that's coming out and the same money that's coming in and going out, what benefit does this have to the general fund? I still don't have that answer, but it is money that would be deposited into the general fund, which can be used more broadly.
Thank you. All right, I'm not seeing any more lights on this bill. Deputy Nui, do you want to continue? All right, we'll go to HB 455. I think that's the next one on your list.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, HB 455 is the Utah Fits All Scholarship Program amendments. It came out earlier this week. We already have a substitute that has been published as of this morning. So I'm going to be working off of substitute 1 to discuss. Just trying to think. So there's a lot of things that this bill does. This is kind of seen as a cleanup from last year's Utah Fits All legislation. One of the things that it does is it clarifies that there should be a financial administrator as well as a contracted entity to be a program manager. So there's kind of two entities that are working on UFA. In addition, it requires us or USBE to reopen the RFP for that program manager position. And so it would open the RFP. In the meantime, if there is a gap in between services between our current program manager and the future program manager, program management would default to the Department of Operations at USBE. It also outlines things that should be included in a contract between the Department of Operations at USBE and that program manager. There's a lot of clarity there in what exactly needs to be shown in the RFP submission, as well as in the final contract between the program manager and USBE. A couple other things as far as the actual payments out or the scholarships out to students, it does restrict what it can be spent on. The first draft that came out said that no more than 20% could be used for extracurricular activities. That in the substitute has been changed to physical education activities. So I think that's drawing maybe a distinction between different kinds of activities that these scholarships can be used for. I'm trying to think what else is super. Those are kind of the big ideas. If there are any questions, this is still fairly new, so I was reading it as I walked into the room today. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to work through them.
Is that Member Lear?
To your great relief, I'm not going to go through every concern I have in this bill, which are multitudinous, to use a Christine like word. But I do have two concerns that I just can't resist mentioning. First of all, line 197 takes away the program manager's approval process of providers, as I read that. That concerns me. I know there's a bunch of
Are you
contention.
speaking to the new draft?
I am not, sorry, no, it's in, under the definitions, parentheses, 16, scholarship expense, and then B under 16.
Okay.
That, I'll just leave it with that concerns me, and I hope maybe you'll think about it and work on it, because I've heard stories of, for instance, a provider in Hawaii that said that that the provider would pay for a trip to study botany in Hawaii. And so that's just one horror story I've heard, but I hope there is a program manager. I wish it were somebody stronger approving those. So that's my one concern that I'll mention. And second one is I'm more concerned than others seem to be about switching the program manager. There's talk about another RFP and ACE being replaced, and I don't, that seems to be in sort of the sense of the last part of the bill. And I don't, my concern is for the board. It's the board that is contracting with ACE. The legislature is not. So it's the board that would be responsible for any concerns that ACE has about being replaced. I don't know if that would be amicable. I don't know if they would not, but I would like the bill to say that if this is the will of the legislature, that the board put out on their RFP, that the board be indemnified for any changes that are not allowed for in the contract. So those are that, because everybody seems kind of casual about it because it's no one but the board that is at risk. And it may be that troubles me. So indemnification, and then the concern that there's still some minimal control by the program manager of approving providers.
Thank you. Member Bacchus.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate your comments, Member Lear. It makes my comments shorter. So, I have great consternation. We have all these conversations about school fees, and the basic program should be free of charge. And it's okay to charge fees for these things that are superfluous, if you will. And yet this scholarship program is allowing for things like fencing lessons, horseback riding lessons, equestrian training. The trip you mentioned is one. There's lots and lots of evidence of parents online using these monies for Christmas presents for their children. There's a whole conversation thread multiple times in these online portals. And I'm wondering what part of this bill, how do we reconcile those two things in our head? You know, the basics of an education is what we will fund for free without fees, if you will, to the residents of our state. And yet this program is being used to provide at no charge, if you will, all these superfluous things that we're not paying for over here. I'm struggling reconciling those two things. Did I say that well?
Madam Chair?
Yes,
Um,
Superintendent
The,
Jones.
the answer to Member Bogus's concerns is, even regardless of this bill, whether it passes or not, we have taken steps with the current program manager to correct whether these are perceived transactions or actual ones, to correct and ensure that it's being made very clear, not by the government or by the agency, by the program manager, on what constitutes a qualified reimbursement. So that, based on what my understanding is of her concern, I would say that regardless of that, we are still, we are in motion right now to address those perceived or documented incidents of that. So does that help, or?
That clarify anything for you?
Thank you. I would say, yes, it does help. My concern is we don't have language that enjoins or prohibits people from abusing this fund. And we've seen the abuse. And maybe it's not documented on our side, but there are people online who are saying, hey, I just did this with this money, and they're outing themselves on the internet. And maybe they're actually not doing it, and they're just bloviating about their shenanigans, but I don't see why someone would do that. So my question would be, what language do we have to prohibit the abuse of these monies, where we are saying that if you are in a public school, this is an allowable fee, then why are we not prohibiting these monies from going to those activities, classes, things like that, if you will? I don't know if I asked that question well. Carol can reframe it if she would like.
Madam Chair, so we do believe that the controls, and it's really incumbent upon, or the onus is on the program manager to ensure valid requests for reimbursement for items or materials. We can actually get with the bill sponsor and try to see if we can further clarify or get some more specificity around that on whose job, whose roles and responsibilities those are. The challenge is, of course, that because there is the processes in place to reimburse for materials and those types of things, that's quite extensive, right? So to try to put into law what would be required, and I'm not saying that Board Member Bogus is saying do that. We feel that the language is sufficient that everybody, and hopefully I'm articulating what what the language is saying is that just that, is that the program manager has to put controls in place that ensures that there is fidelity in what is being approved for reimbursement, and that it's in the interest of the educational experience of the student. So.
Thank you. We have one more comment, Member Earl, and then we have reached our 10 minutes. We can move on, but Member Earl.
Yeah, just a quick comment. Just familiar with some of those supposed charges that when investigated were not actually true at all. So yes, people are making up narratives on there. I don't know, that just seems really peculiar, but it has been found and they have inflated their expenses or whatever. So it is important, I think, just like what Scott said, that there is a way of verifying and validating those. And if they're brought to someone's attention, I think ACE is one of those that, needs to be followed up on to make sure that they are putting in the proper controls. And I think they've worked to do that. So.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes.
I'm actually decisively engaged with ACE to request granular level detail of reporting on where money is going, right? So for example, I just made a recent request to have a report sent to us that details how much money has gone to local education agencies, districts, or charter schools that have chosen to be UFA providers, right? Because the question has come up quite a bit on, well, hey, is money flowing back to LEAs from this particular source? So we felt that the best way to answer that would be to query that. We have emphasized with the program manager that they have to be audit ready, right? They have to be able to, because it won't be us, we're not allowed to audit, but this program will get audited. And so they need to set conditions within their systems so that when those samples occur, they can provide the granular level detail of, parent requested this for reimbursement, we did reimburse that, or they did request that too. I can attest that ACE is doing a really pretty good job about, because I know this because there are appeals, there are questions about what you can do it. Perhaps it wasn't done as well at the beginning, but I can see significant improvements, and I do caution us not to base it just on a posting on a Facebook. It's important, and we see those things, but I do believe there's follow-up and controls that are being taken place. And if, in the future, if there is a different program manager, they would be held to the same standards. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing any more lights. Let's move to SB 111, and this will be our final bill, and then we'll move to to any actions. Do you, Vice Chair Hart? Okay.
Okay. SB 111 is Public Education Governance Amendments. This is brought by Senator Milner and Milner. This would change several aspects of the Board of Education's current policies and legal abilities. The first big change is on line 50. Right now in the Utah State Constitution, we refer to this often in board meetings, the board has general control and supervision over public education in the state of Utah. The interpretation historically has been that that means that the board can make rules related to anything having to do with the general control and supervision of education in Utah. However, this bill narrows that definition and says, and gives essentially general control and supervision an actual definition. So this would be the first time that that has happened. And that definition would be the direction and management of public education system as the legislature designates the components of the public education system in accordance with the laws that the legislature makes. So that's one of the big changes. Another change is that if the state board may remove the state superintendent with a vote of 2/3 of the members of the board. That will be found on line 100. Further down, well, I'll stop at 150. On 150, it includes that data requirement, that data collection requirement that's similar to Representative Hall's bill, if you saw that. So these lines are a little bit similar. It would do a similar thing in requiring data from LEA that we are required to turn around and give to somebody else. And then finally, my questions. There is some language in there that would clarify that the superintendent's guidance is not the same as the board, the state superintendent's advice may not relate to a question of law and does not constitute an order or directive that mandates action by the recipient of the advice. And then beginning with line 299, this goes through the review process that the board would have to put into place to review complaints against an educational entity's violation of state statute. So it is somewhat similar to the process that we have in place. It is much more in-depth and has many more steps, but gets to a similar place, I would say, in intent. And then corrective action, the ability of the board to implement corrective action begins on line 343. I think anything else from the chairs?
No,
Okay.
I'm not seeing any lights on this, so.
Okay.
I think we
Awesome.
will we are right on schedule to move to board action. So this is your time. We have approximately 15 minutes left before we need to remove from the room. So if you have any action that you would like to take on bills in terms of recommendations or positions, now would be your time to do it, board. Great. Molly?
Yeah,
Or Vice Chair Hart?
yes, I had a motion that was postponed, and I'd like to make that motion again. That motion is to oppose Senate Bill 111, Public Education Governance Amendments.
Okay, we have a motion to oppose SB 111. Do we have a second to that? Second, Member Rill. Do we have any discussion to this?
I'd like to speak.
Yes,
to my
please
motion.
speak to it.
We pended this, which I concurred with, so that we could work with the sponsors and others. I don't see any movement on it. I still think that it directs the board in ways that the board couldn't direct itself. I think that it also is fairly ambiguous. I don't like that the message that it's sending that that advice from the state board is in some cases optional, but then we turn around and we do corrective action. I think that just confuses, it doesn't clarify, it confuses the field. I just don't think the bill brings clarity. In addition, I think the corrective action and the investigative details are convoluted. In mapping out how that system even would work, there's a number of contradictions. I just think that this bill sets us up for failure and does not add clarity. And I think there's a number of things that we've addressed as a board and worked on in good faith in our bylaws and in our rules. And I just I don't think that this bill is helpful. Thank you.
Member Earl.
Oh, sorry, you looked over that way, so I thought maybe
I
it
was
was
just making sure your
Lear
your
or Rill.
speaker was
Yep.
on. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. I do appreciate Senator Milner. We've had some discussions with her. She's been thoughtful. I'm going to use a sensitive materials phrase. Taken as a whole, it's just, I'm trying to understand, it's a piece here and a piece from standards here and a piece for so as a whole, I'm not understanding fully why the intent was, what the intent was or where it came from. Would have loved to had that discussion before the bill came out. I don't think the board itself had any discussion or engagement with that. I know she worked with a number of other people on it. And I think there's some provisions in here that, you know, maybe down the road would have further discussion, and maybe other bills are addressing those. But like I said, I think all these different things add up. Yeah, this could be fixed here and this could be fixed here, right? But it's everything together that lends itself to a question as to intent, as well as, you know, what does it mean when it rolls out, right? Kind of a thing. So anyways, that's just my comments related to it.
All right, I'm not seeing any. I'm going to speak to this. Oh, okay. Member Lear. It is.
Then the other setup. I feel like I have to explain myself a little bit. Some of this I don't mind. And yet some of it I don't mind, but I think it's unconstitutional. And I think that a bill that clarifies language in the Constitution is not, I don't believe it's constitutional. I know there are varying viewpoints and every attorney's probably got a different opinion, but I am troubled, not so much with these clarifications as the practice of clarifying by statute what the Constitution says. So I'm troubled by that part. But my primary objection is the investigative part, where I believe that the board has some good practices in place that are working well, and B, that the language specifically that I just cringe at is review each complaint the state board receives. We're talking about earlier, 325,000 maybe for critical board employees, maybe more money. This reviewing each complaint would require, I think, 10 more. Kind of the way we've multiplied our audit department would then be true for this practice. So that part I just can't accept or abide. So that's my concern, not so much the piecemeal nature of it. That's the nature of bills too often, I think. But it's more this investigative piece.
All right, are there any more lights before I rush through? Okay, seeing no more lights, I'm going to speak to this just because I think in my 2 years, 2 months, I've abstained on one bill. I will be abstaining on this bill because I think Senator Milner is still working in good faith, trying to make something that works. And I struggle with taking a motion of oppose on a bill that she has not released. She has not asked it to be released from rules yet. There is a substitute that she's working on that has taken into a lot of consideration input from our board. And so I just wanted to explain why I will be abstaining today. So no comments to that. We will move to a vote. All right, so the motion is that the board take a position of oppose on SB 111. Member Bogus.
Yes.
Member Bollinger.
Yes.
Member Booth.
No.
Member Brinton.
Yes.
Member Davis. Okay, she dropped off. Oh, excuse me. Member Earl.
Yes.
Member Green.
Yes.
Member Hall.
Yes.
Vice Chair Hart.
Yes.
Chair Hymas.
Yes.
Member Kelly. Thank you. Member Carey.
Yes.
Member Lear.
Yes.
Member Real.
Yes.
And I am abstaining. That motion passes. We had 13 votes and 1 no and 1 abstain. So that passes with 11. 12 yeses. Okay. Yes. 11 yeses, 1 no and 1 abstain. Oh, with Member Davis, Member Kelly absent. And the no was Booth and the abstain was Vice Chair Wood. All right, any other actions today? All right, not seeing any other actions today. There's a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Oh, do you have one? Okay. Okay, there's a motion to adjourn. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
No. Okay.
No. If I can clarify, it's only, I didn't know if there was another person that had a motion.
Did you have one, Member Brenton? Or Member Green? Sorry.
I don't have one.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't know if there was somebody else that had wanted to make a motion, so that's why I voted no. But if that's not the case, then I vote yes.
Okay, that motion passes. So we are adjourned. Thank you.